to the emergency station.
Oh my gosh! Howdy there, disco citizens. I'm Teri Gamble.
I'm Julia Marchese.
Welcome to Horror X, a collaboration between the George A. Romero Foundation and our podcast, Horror Movie Survival Guide.
Horror X explores the femmes who make fright films fantasticorical and collaborates with them about their experiences in film and horror.
Our next guest has been in the horror space for years and has worked with some of our favorite directors and producers like Scott Derrickson, Jason Blum, and Judd Apatow.
And a director in her own right, having directed multiple shorts and her feature video Satanic Panic in conjunction with our pals at Fangoria.
Oh,
Love
those guys are cool. Oh my gosh.
Welcome to Miss Chelsea Stardust.
Yay,
Hello.
Chelsea Stardust!
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yay!
Oh, this is a dream come true. Like, we are so happy. We have been wanting to chat with you for, I think, months and months. Might have been delayed by a beautiful wedding at one point. And congratulations to you on that. We're so happy to have you, though. Oh my gosh.
So I know you like me, horror has been a part of your life for quite some time. I was a horror hound from a very young age. I've corrupted Teri at a later age, but let's talk about it. Let's get into like your beginnings and what the scariest movie was when you're little, and like kind of go from there.
How did you fall in love with horror? Yes.
Great question. One of my favorite questions. So like my love of movies comes from my parents because they love movies, they're artists, and they always wanted me to have a well-rounded cinema education.
Mom and dad.
Good
Yeah. So like I saw all the AFI like top 100 movies before I even went to college. So they wanted me to see the classics, but also art movies like Maya Deren.
Mhm.
And they wanted me to have sort of a diverse film education. So they're like, you need to know Maya Deren, but you also need to know Spike Lee and you need to know David Lean, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of horror specifically, that probably my love of horror comes from a couple things. Literature. So Goosebumps, Bunnicula, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yeah.
So that, I think a lot of times people don't give books as much recognition as they deserve in terms of
Sure.
gateway horror. So that, but also my parents love Halloween. And so Halloween was I'm an only child. So Halloween was a very big deal in my household. I couldn't trick or treat. I've never been trick or treating because I lived in a very rural part of the Midwest.
So we need to take you trick or treating, is what I just heard.
I
Cool.
will still go.
We're gonna take you.
No, I like still into my 30s would still trick or treat, because like the trick is, folks, you go kind of later when the kids are done, and then they're like, no kids came all night, have it all, and we'll dump the whole thing in your bag. No one cares how old you are. It's fantastic.
Especially if you wear a mask or something, you'd be like, I'm in high school.
Yeah, I've never not dressed up for a Halloween.
We got to hear about some of your best costumes. I mean,
Oh, I have some incredible ones because I have a friend who makes them for me. So my friend Jess like custom makes almost all my Halloween costumes. But so Halloween was such a big deal. Man, my parents always threw like an epic Halloween party, but leading up to it, like October is like the high holy month. And
Yeah.
so we grew, this is going to sound very idyllic, but it is real. We had a pumpkin patch. So we like grew pumpkins and we would be carving them like the day before the party. And we'd lay down, newspaper in the living room, watch VHS tapes. My dad had a stack of like Dracula,
Yes.
Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Wolfman.
Classics.
Yeah. And, but also Disney's Legends of Sleepy Hollow and
Yes.
It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
So
Yeah. So that was sort of my, all the things I was watching, and I just loved those movies because it was movies I was watching around my favorite time of year.
Right.
So I became very nostalgic for those movies. And because my dad saw that how much I liked them, he started showing me more and more. Everything was always like pretty age appropriate. Like they weren't showing me, Hellraiser when I was 5, but the movie that sort of changed it all. And I love all the Universal monster movies, but the movie that I watched that made me feel such fear, I watched when I was 10 years old, and it was George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
Hey.
Yep.
The gateway drug, and we love it.
Well, tell us. Let's go into depth. This is what this is about, especially this one. So tell us about what that was for you.
So I remember, and it's funny because that movie left such an imprint on me. I've even like written articles about it because he had a VHS tape. I still have the same copy I watched for the first time.
That's what's great about VHS, man. It doesn't quit. You could pause it in 1983 and it'll still be there, right where you paused it.
Wherever you were kind and didn't rewind. Yep.
So I remember he showed it to me. I was 10 years old, and he said, "Hey, if you get too scared, we'll turn it off." And I remember watching, and I was like, "I think I'm getting kind of scared." He's like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, no, it's fine. I'm fine. But I was losing my mind. And then, and again, it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. And the music and everything about it was so scary to me. And I had such a crush on Ben, on the lead. So I really loved him.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like, there's something.
He's taking charge.
There's something.
Yeah, exactly. Taking charge.
I feel things.
Yeah. But then I remember I was so mad at the end because we've gone on this amazing journey. And I was like, oh man, like non-zombified man is the greatest killer. So it's like, it was the most traumatic ending for me as a 10-year-old child.
Yeah.
And of course, like my dad, we talked about it. And I was so devastated by it that it was very hard to process. It's like a complicated thing to process when you're 10 years old. But that movie just scared me so much. And I made a point to then watch it as much. I'd show it to people who had never seen it, including, so I grew up in Amish country. I am not Amish, but the people around me are. And I had a babysitter who was Amish, and I showed it to her. And I think it traumatized her because they don't watch movies.
No.
So you threw her in the deep end, man.
I did. It was super cruel. I shouldn't have done that. But anyways, it's just a movie that I can't watch it by myself. I still love it to this day. It left a huge, huge impression on me. And and of course I love Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, etc.
Yeah, did it lead you down a kind of Romero path into other works?
And because I was in the Midwest, like it shot in Pittsburgh, that's only like an hour and a half from where I grew up. So it felt, I love regional filmmakers, and Romero is a regional filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that it was felt like it was in my backyard, and where it's shot is like where I'm literally looks like where I live. So
no wonder you were terrified.
Yeah. So, and then I just kept consuming more cinema as I got older. I was sort of exposed to more things. So then it, became, my dad was sort of showing me the more accessible classics like Carrie, which I of course connected to, like when I had a horrible time in grade school and high school. And so I was like, oh man, if I could have Carrie's powers.
Yeah.
But
there's so many teenage girls who have wished for that power, and it would have gone
right.
Yeah.
But also right.
Yeah. So Carrie, Alien, Near Dark, The Exorcist, The Shining, sort of all the big heavy hitters. And then I started taking a film, I guess I'll say it's I started taking a additional studies class at the Cleveland Institute of Art with this experimental filmmaker named Robert Banks, who's pretty incredible and well known in the Cleveland art scene. So it was additional education courses, and it was all on film. Because my entire life is documented on on video cameras, because one came out right when I was born. So I had access to a video camera growing up to shoot things here and there.
Yeah. Did you make short films when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
So my dad was constantly filming. I have every event of my life documented.
Oh,
That's so nice to be
So
able to look back and see yourself,
Wow.
see your parents, see your friends.
it's pretty amazing. I'm
What
very
a-
thankful for that. My birth is on Super 8 film. Like,
Whoa.
okay. Well, have you watched it?
yeah, it's not like anything like explicit. It's just like it's from like the other side of the room.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just like, it's kind of cool to see my mom, who's basically like just a little bit younger than me now when she had me. And so it's pretty cool to have that. But having access to a video camera, I was, in high school turning in short films instead of writing papers, which was really nice to do.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us about some of these
Yeah.
really, really early films that you made?
Yeah, I actually just found them. I have them all.
Mhm.
They're on VHS.
Yes.
And I think the first one was that the first one? I think so. I think the very first one I did was I just shot. We have a bunch of like vintage toys in my house back home.
This
And I
sounds like
remember
the
just
coolest house to grow up in.
Right.
it's covered in art because my parents are artists, so there's like art everywhere. But I remember just filming all these toys and filming it in black and white, and it was to it's to a Paul McCartney song, and then I switch it to filming my room, which was covered in posters and modern toys, and that was in color into like a Smashing Pumpkins song. And so it's basically like a journey through childhood to teenage years kind of thing. And
In
I
a
think
Linklater movie.
yeah. And I think I called it like Coming of Age is what I titled it. And then I cut it on like iMovie. It was like the first thing I did. I still have it. And then I kept, making little things here and there. I did a trailer for English class of Catcher in the Rye.
Ooh.
Because that will never be made into a movie. So
I would love to see that. That's amazing. Did you
I'll see if I can
you're like,
find
hey,
it.
I just need a Holden. Like, how do you hold
yeah, it was a
auditions
friend.
for Holden Caulfield, man? That's intense.
Yeah, it's just some a person I went to high school with. And in high school, I just was like, hey, will you be this character? Here's what I need you to do. And he was like one of the cool kids in high school.
Okay.
Of course.
And so the fact that I was like, hey, will you come with me, who you like, someone who you're nice to, but you don't really talk to, and let me film you I think we shot on a college campus. And it was just like a montage of like what a like freshman in high school would think Catcher in the Rye would be like. And I think I had a
This
Neil
sounds
Young
amazing.
song to it.
Want to see this so badly.
I
But
actually
also
never
it
talked
makes-
about it until now. It's kind of
But
funny.
it makes sense to do it from a freshman high school point of view.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the point of view of the book is, right? It's
Yeah.
Holden's young point of view of the world. Everybody's fucking phony.
Yeah, exactly. And then I continued to do kind of other little things. I did one in French because I took French class. And but then during the latter part of high school, I did this continuing education course where we shot on film. So it was Super 8 cameras, cutting, splicing, drawing on the film, painting on the film.
That's awesome. You get to experience
You're an
that.
artist. You got to really.
I got to do it. I got to do the real
Yeah.
thing. And that was really fun. So that film professor, Robert Banks, when I told him I love genre, when I love horror, I should say specifically, he asked me what I was watching, and I told him. He said, oh, you haven't seen nothing yet. So the last day of class, because I took this for a couple of years, this course, and he handed me a stack of dubbed VHS tapes. And he said, now your education begins. And it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Martin, The Hills Have Eyes. I think it was those three. There might be one other one.
That's whoa. Did your mind
Oh,
go?
God told me to. The Larry Cohen movie was the other one.
Okay.
So those were
Wow.
the four. He those. So of all the movies, those are the ones he picks.
They're great
And-
choices and so different from one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did your brain just like explode? Like what happened after that?
Yeah, so I watched them in secret because I feel like they were all rated R or not rated. And so I was really like, didn't want my parents to catch me watching them. So I'd watch them like whenever they left the house.
Illicit.
I wanted more.
Contraband.
So- yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
so it was like a drug. So then I started going to the library and our video store, Video One, rest in peace, and
yes.
would rent as much as I could. And I was renting like crazy because the covers, like I'd go through, we all talk
Yeah.
about this. this is something that generations below us won't really understand, but being able to go in a video store and I'd pick up every horror cover, look at the back, put it down, pick up the next one, look at the back, put it down.
Mhm.
And
What
the
are some
cover
of the ones
scared
that
me.
stick out to you?
Oh my God. The, what is it? Is it Nightmare on Elm Street 3? The one where Krueger is like eating, is it Patricia
Yes.
is that's Dream Warriors,
That
right?
is
Where
three,
he's like
yeah.
consuming her.
Mhm.
So that was on the back of the cover and I thought it was so scary.
Yeah.
And Child's Play, I couldn't watch Chucky until I don't think I watched a Child's Play movie until I was a senior in high school because Chucky scared me so much.
He's so scary.
And that first movie is really scary.
Yeah.
So the Texas Chainsaw 2 cover, because I loved The Breakfast Club. I was
Right.
like, oh my God,
Yes.
they're posed just like it. That's crazy.
So
and-
brilliant that they
But
did
then
that.
but then that one goes back because that's like they're replicating a Who picture, so it's just like how
Oh
far
yes, yes.
does it go? But we have to specifically talk about Martin because not only
Yeah.
are we talking about George Romero today, but also we love Martin more than we can even tell you. Not only as a film, but also as a character. He's like one
Yes.
of our very favorite film characters.
Yes.
And
So
So
and
glad
that
you got
was
that gifted to you. You just lit up, honestly, when we heard that. Because we've also interviewed John Amplas on our podcast before too, and we're such a big fans
my
of his.
gosh.
He's such a sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
oh,
I know. Yeah,
that's
our
awesome.
eyes too. Same. We were like, the whole time.
Yeah.
It's one of my most unlistenables to go back to because we're giggling so much.
We're
during
really
the interview.
excited.
It's so bad.
No, I loved that movie. And also they were just movies I weren't, we didn't have the resource we have now of being able to just like Google something or
Right.
Google a title or whatever. Like you just had to discover it or have someone tell you about it.
Yeah.
Or
And
get your Leonard Maltin guide and just look on
Mhm.
through.
yeah. And so anyways, I was like haunted by like the Eaten Alive cover and the basket case cover. And
Sure.
so
Ghoulies,
as-
that Ghoulies always
Cool.
get
Oh
you.
yeah, totally. So, and I just kept watching and watching and watching and but ultimately, knew I wanted to go to film school and be a filmmaker just because I loved all movies. And I also want to say like we talk a lot about movies pre like 1990, but I want to say that like I loved the movies, the horror films of the 90s and 2000s because I graduated high school. Well, I'm not going to date myself, but in the early 2000s. And a lot of times those films don't ever get talked about as much. I think they're now getting
Mhm.
people are looking at them in a new perspective now. I mean, Shout Factory releasing 13 Ghosts is like a big deal in like
Yeah.
a beautiful Blu-ray. So
Yeah.
like, I
the
think it's
Matthew
important to
Lillard factor
recognize
on that, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, totally.
All day.
But that how important those movies are. And like, I was able to see those, like, I mean, I didn't live close to a movie theater, but was able to see them. And they influenced me as a director too, because the modern stuff I think is really important to recognize just as much as the stuff that led up to that too. But
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, but that's my love of horror, of long-winded answer to your first question.
This is what this is.
Perfect.
This is us talking, but this is how did it turn into something that's a passive experience where you're watching movies to an active experience where you're making movies? How was that transitioned?
I mean,
I
you
think
made
that-
them since you were a kid, but yeah. how did
Yeah,
it-
I mean, I think that's because my dad was always filming. So I think that was something I gravitated towards. Like, I want to do that. Like, I want to pick up the camera. And my dad had gone to film school as well and art school. He actually went to undergrad film school with David Lynch before David Lynch went to AFI. So,
All right.
That's pretty cool.
yeah. So I think I was sort of obsessed about, I would keep a journal and write down like who the costume designers were, who the composers were, the DPs. And then I would look at and see which directors. It was like, oh, wow, Tim Burton uses the same people. Oh, those must be his people.
Yeah.
You made your
and
own little IMDb.
Yeah, I did. I totally did. Like a big fucking nerd.
That's
Yes.
okay. Our podcast, my horror movie store got started because my best friend Marion and I in college went to our video store, Video Gold, and watched every horror movie in the horror movie section and kept a notebook exactly like you. So we did synopsis, we had
With
the
the
chainsaw
directors,
rating.
there's ratings, like the whole thing. So
This
this
is-
was birthed out of like, I found out about that and I was like, yeah, we have to make that a show. And
So here we are, nerds
Yeah.
talking to nerds.
We get it.
There's and I think I just wanted, especially once I was making stuff in high school, I liked being the boss. Maybe that's because also I'm an only child. So I there was a control factor too. But I also just liked telling stories, and I thought it was pretty, to me, it felt like the ultimate form of expression and the ultimate art form. And then I told I think they were like, maybe you should try to minor in like business. I said, oh, I'll minor in theater. They're like, okay, that's not
me.
what we
That's
meant.
me too. Film and drama. So I got
Yeah. So, and then I went to film school. So, and this is at a time where I shot almost everything I made was on film. We were still shooting. It was 16 millimeter. So that was still happening. And a little digital was just taking hold.
That's amazing that you got to be right at that changeover, right? And experience both ways.
I'm very thankful.
Every time
you
edit now very easily digitally, like think about how much time this would have taken if this was on actual film.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I love working on film in general, but I'm so glad I got to have that experience. But I just knew I wanted to make movies. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And college was, I love where I went to college. I went to Ohio University, very small film school at the time. Now they've opened it up to, they only took 3 undergrads a year in the film program there. It was very small because it was a grad program. Now they've opened it up. So now you can apply as an undergrad, right? Anyone can do that, but I had to go through like the honors program. And so I was alongside the grad students, and the grad students were from all over the world. It was an incredibly diverse program. And so I got sort of insights into what other filmmakers from other countries wanted to make and the stories they wanted to tell. But genre films in terms of horror genre were not really looked highly upon, I guess I'll say.
Yeah. Well, there's a stigma.
It's changing.
Yeah,
It's changing now, but it was definitely, especially then, it was still a problem.
I was like the only person who wanted to make horror movies, and they didn't understand why. And they had the film school, even though they let me make whatever I wanted to make, they had a very hard time understanding my want and need to make those movies. So instead I sort of went I was like, okay, well, if I did like a zombie music video, and that was sort of, I was like, okay, well, even though they were supporting what I wanted to do, I thought, okay, maybe I'll just go the route of really weird filmmaking instead of horror filmmaking. So my biggest influences were like John Waters and Todd Solondz and like real weird stuff.
The weirder, the better. I love them both so much. That's so great.
Yeah. So that's what I was like, you know what? This is my chance to make the weirdest thing I can think of, which was my senior thesis. And because I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get that chance again. So I'm going to take it now. And of course, now I've gone back and they've been so supportive of my success now that I've made 2 movies. And so now they understand. And of course, those movies are making tons of money. So horror movies are making tons of money. But at the time, it wasn't really, they didn't understand. They're like, okay, so you don't want to be starving in a basement apartment in New York City making the documentary that you care so much about. You don't want to do that. Explain why. Like that kind of thing,
But I mean, I guess, and what do you think enhanced you as being a woman filmmaker? Do you feel like there was an extra layer of trying to understand why you would be wanting to do this? Because you do it so well and it's done with so much joy. And I think sometimes people forget that if you look horror, like you love horror, you don't have to look scary, right? Like you can still look like sweet angel faces. You're like, oh, but the more gore you bet, the better, man. Give me some Texas Chainsaw. I'm into it.
Yeah, I think, well, as a woman specifically, I think women gravitate towards horror for a lot of reasons, but we live in fear every day. So it's sort of cathartic for us. I mean, like Wes Craven says, it doesn't, horror films don't create fear, they release fear. So I think that it's for anybody, but for me specifically, speaking as a woman, I find them to be very cathartic. And also we have, on a whole other level, we have a different relationship with blood that men will never understand.
I never thought
that
about
like
that. You're
cis
right.
men will never get. So that's, again, that's just me personally, but I think that and I've just always gravitated towards it. And also there's the factor of like, oh, the final girl, we're put through shit. We're put through all this hell, which I was like, oh yeah, just like life, real life.
Mhm.
But like the more extreme version. Um
Yeah,
but
well,
Absolutely.
this is why, horror movie survival guide is about that, about how do you survive.
yeah,
You watch enough horror movies, can you survive and learn these tips about what you should be doing and not be doing.
Yeah.
And
think about it all the
trying
time.
right, and trying to take it into the real world and be like, all right, if I'm in a situation, Jason Voorhees here's what am I doing in this situation? What weapons do I
I'm
have?
always checking my exits, like where's
Yep.
out of the room quickly,
Back
like where
seat
do
of
we
the
go?
car.
Yeah, check. There's it's safety, right? Is what it comes
Yeah,
to. I think that's
exactly.
very important. So you were making your student films. How'd you transition into professional, and what was your first, I guess, big gig out?
Yeah.
And you've assisted and worked with so many amazing people. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So during college, I got an internship because I knew I wanted to um, be a filmmaker. At first, I wanted to go to New York because I had spent a lot of time in New York.
Mhm.
And there was such this mentality of you need to be an indie, like we're all indie filmmakers, but that you need to be starving in a basement to make your movies and that you need to make art films. You don't make mainstream films, you make art films. And so I was like, going to New York, fuck Hollywood, like not doing that. And then I got an internship for a company called Heyday Films, and they made the Harry Potter movies.
Oh wow.
And this was between my junior and senior year that summer, and it was on the Warner Brothers lot.
Ooh, living the dream.
And
Cool.
yeah, so I came out to LA, and I hadn't been out here since I was like 10 years old when I went to Disneyland.
Oh, you were at Disneyland for movies basically there. I mean, that's like Warner Brothers. That lot is yeah.
So Warner Brothers is incredible, and to have that be my first time in California since I was a child, and our office, the Heyday's office, they shared with Phantom 4, which is David Goyer, and then Christopher Nolan and Jonah Nolan were down the hall writing the Batman Begins movies. I think like they shared a wing with with Clint Eastwood's company. So basically, like there is all this magic around me that I was like, oh, maybe I want to be in LA. And the internship was incredible. They actually asked if I wanted to PA on the Harry Potter movies, and I said I had to go back and finish my senior thesis. So I don't know what my life would have been like if I would have
Okay.
said,
All
sure,
right,
I'll
that's
fly
right.
to London.
We all have a sliding doors. I think we all
Yeah.
have a Hollywood sliding doors. We can share ours another time, but yes, we all.
If this would
Yeah.
have happened, what would
Oh
have
yeah.
happened?
What would have happened? Yeah. But anyways, I did the internship. I went back, I finished my senior thesis, graduated, and I got home. And I got a call like 2 days after I got home from graduation. So this just shows you like you never know who you know, that bullshit saying, but it's so true,
Mhm.
is so important. So the woman one of the women I'd interned for had left companies, had transitioned companies, and she just called me out of the blue and said, hey, I've left Heyday, I'm at a different company, my assistant just left, are you still moving here?
Ooh,
And I said, I'll be there in 5 days. She's like, cool, the job is yours.
nice.
I move out. I literally am home 5 days, get a car, drive across the country, and I start working. So my first boss out in LA, like official boss, was her name's Allie Bell. She worked at Montecito Picture Company, Ivan Reitman's company. So old school comedy,
Nice.
literally.
Mhm.
So that was like, I'd never been an assistant before, didn't know shit about it. I didn't know because there's a lot of stuff they just don't teach you in film school. They teach you how to make
No.
movies, but they don't teach you how to survive.
Right.
And so
No business.
no, but yeah.
No business. Mhm.
So she was so patient with me, and they made a movie while I was there called Post Grad, directed by a woman. So that was like the first real movie set I went on, and I got to meet the cast, which was Carol Burnett and Michael Keaton and Jane Lynch, and like it was
Nice.
pretty
Just
incredible.
icons, just
Yeah.
legends. Icons
Yeah.
and legends.
Exactly. And so I started in the assistant world, but I skipped like working in a mailroom or for an agency or a management company and went right to a production company. And I couldn't have asked for a better one because Ivan Reitman, RIP, was so incredible and so kind. And I got to go to his daughter's wedding and parties at his place in Montecito. And he was just such a nice person. But that was my first start, was sort of in the comedy world. I'm not in, not working in horror yet. And then I transitioned from that job. So I just was in the assistant world. So I worked for Montecito for 2 years. Then I transitioned to work at Apatow Productions, and I was one of Judd Apatow's 4 assistants. But then I consistently worked for men for the rest of my time as an assistant, which was fine, but in comedy still for Judd. And then I had an opportunity to interview to be Jason Blum's assistant. And also, like, when I worked for Judd, the comedy space just wasn't where my heart was. And, that was very obvious. So, and obviously they don't work in horror whatsoever. So I knew I needed to find a new, I needed to find a new job. So, and opportunity to interview to be Jason's assistant. I didn't know who he was because I looked at his IMDb and it was like, credits were The Reader, The Tooth Fairy, Kicking and Screaming, and Paranormal Activity.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I liked Paranormal. Yeah, Paranormal's great. So I interviewed with him and we bonded over Hitchcock because I have a Hitchcock tattoo. Nice. And my love of the genre, obviously. And he invited me to come. He's like, come watch one of our movies and I want to hear your feedback on it. And so I went to a screening on the Sony lot. There were only he said, bring some friends. So I brought 2 friends. It was me, my friends, and Rob Zombie.
Nice.
And in this teeny little theater, and the movie starts and it's Insidious.
Oh, wow.
And so the music cue, Joe Bishara's score, this title coming up, and I watched the movie. It's so scary. The first time you watch it in a dark theater, terrifying. And so afterwards he pulled me aside. He's like, what do you think? And I said, I think this movie is going to be a really big deal. And he said, cool, you're hired. Hey. And I started at the top of 2011, and April is when Insidious came out, and the whole company changed after that. Wow. So it went from calling, being like, I have Jason Blum for so-and-so. Everyone's like, who, what? And then to it becoming its own studio. And then everyone's like, oh my God, hold on, let me get my boss. So watching that company kind of grow from, again, I was there. It was like me and Jason and his exec in a one-room office on the Paramount lot to grow into this sort of studio it is now. So I worked on 28 movies in my 4 years there.
Wow.
So,
and how was it on set being different between a comedy and a horror? Was there a different feeling?
Yeah. So when I was at Apatow, I worked on Bridesmaids, Funny People, Get 'Em to the Greek. So those are the ones I got to work on.
I'm a big comedy nerd. I'm dying about all of that. I love all of those. Okay, amazing. We'll have to talk more about that later too, but yes.
Yeah. All those, on-set experiences were great. And so my mentors are primarily from in the horror space. So they're like Adam Robitel, Chris Landon, James Wan, Lee Winnell. But being on set, because I was an assistant, I could only go to set if it was a night shoot or a weekend or whatnot. It wasn't until I worked on, so after my 4 years at Blumhouse, I started making short films, but I also was assisting directors short term. So only a couple months. So I assisted commercial directors, TV directors, but then I shadowed Adam Robitel on Insidious 4, The Last Key. And that was, I was shadowing him basically. So that was the most, I couldn't have that. I can't recommend shadowing enough. If you get the opportunity to, if you want to direct, to get the opportunity to do that. Because I just got to see the whole process from start to finish, which even when you're an assistant, you kind of see that, but it's not like being in the room, you know what I mean? Right. Or being on set from start to finish. And it was so fascinating because you're seeing, okay, what is the line producer freaking out about? Because you're day is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Like
We're
it's just-
losing the light.
yeah.
Gonna have
And to
look that up.
see,
Yep.
yeah, to see the director talk to the actors and the crew and sort of communicating their vision. And so, and Adam is like one of the nicest humans on the planet. So, I couldn't ask for better mentors in that sense. So, but all of those pieces, you know, and even shooting, you know, I shot 7 short films, some with Crypt TV, some on my own, but it was all learning experiences because basically I just wanted to be as ready as possible for my first feature. So like while I'm assisting these directors and stuff, I'm sending scripts to Blumhouse because when I left, Jason was like, I don't want to be a producer. I don't want to be an executive. And so I told Jason I would be his assistant until I was ready to direct my own movies. And so he said, well, when I left, he said, well, we need to hire someone who has like your knowledge of the genre space. And I said, you should hire Ryan Turek. And Ryan was working for Shock Till You Drop. And he said, oh yeah, would he leave Shock? And I was like, I don't know. Let me ask him. And I asked Ryan, I was like, would you ever leave? And he said, oh my God, yes, to work for Blumhouse. So like I left, Ryan came in and I was just sending him things I was attached to because I was like, do you like this? How about this? Could Blumhouse make this? And then finally he read, or I told him about All That We Destroy and he loved it, passed it up the chain of Blumhouse. And that was my first movie. So, and that ended up getting acquired by the TV department. So that's like, technically All That We Destroy is my first feature, but a lot of people confuse that because it's part of the Into the Dark franchise.
Right.
So it's like the Mother's Day. So Mother's Day, everyone go watch All That We Destroy on Hulu. And so it got acquired by them to be part of that TV movie, quote unquote, slate.
Gotcha.
Got it.
So I shot that. Now we're in 2018. So I shot that at the top of 2018. And then I shot Satanic Panic the latter half of 2018. So they were back-to-back shoots.
Wow.
What was
And they
that
came
stress
out-
like?
Yeah.
You know what? At the time I was like, I will never do this again. But now I would give anything to get to do that again. But they both came out within the same month too. So it's like Mother's Day 2019, All That We Destroy premiered, and then Overlook was the end of May 2019. That's where Satanic Panic premiered. So 2018 and 2019 were crazy months, but
Just interviews back to back to back and then
Yes.
editing.
yeah. But I felt like all the things before I made my first movie prepared me for that. Like if I wouldn't have had all those experiences, I think that's why my first All That We Destroy was such a great shoot, was because I was basically making it with all the people who made all these short films with me and who got barely paid anything. And then I got to kind of
got your
reward
Tim Burton
everybody.
crew. This is what
I
you
did.
right?
I
We're building
did.
them up, right? Yeah.
I did. Yeah. And I'm still friends with the actors in that movie and things like that. So, you know, same thing with Satanic Panic, but everything kind of led up to that. And All That We Destroy is science fiction. It's like very dark. It's very Black Mirror. And Satanic Panic's a horror comedy because I want to be working in just different subgenres of horror. So there's stories to tell in all those.
Yeah.
We love subgenres and subgenres. That is our jam over here for sure. What are some of your like fondest memories over the years? Your favorite interactions you've gotten to have in the horror space?
Oh my goodness. I feel like there's so many. I would say like there's sort of some experiences like a lot. So along the way when I worked at for Montecito, it would probably be going on set for post grad, getting to meet Michael Keaton. I beat Zach Gilford at beer pong at the wrap party. So for any Friday Night Lights fans out there, QB1. And going to Ivan's daughter's wedding was pretty incredible because I remember like going in the bathroom and passing Oprah and then seeing like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that was like my first sort of dipping
We're
a
in
toe.
Montecito for real.
Yeah.
Dreamlike, right? Where
it was crazy.
So surreal because they're real people.
Those are people from the TV.
Yeah, and I was so young at the time. Like I was fresh out of college and
Mhm.
trying to be like, not geek out and trying to just keep it
Not
together.
phased.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you get starstruck easily?
I get starstruck more. I don't get starstruck by actors as much as I get starstruck by like directors or DPs or editors or things like that.
Your personal
Um,
heroes. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when I saw Wes Craven, I definitely like got starstruck.
Yeah,
Things like
that's
that.
amazing.
Um,
Did you?
but
I'm surprised that your professor didn't add Last House on the Left to that pile, because if you want to go hardcore,
he picked Hills Have Eyes. That was
Yeah,
his
which is
his pick.
pretty
Like
comparable.
outside the box, but but yeah, so that sort of, those are the memories, from that time. For my time with at Apatow is probably Bridesmaids, because being on set for that was awesome, but also right before, this just shows you like what great people they are, but right before the movie shot, Kristen and Annie, who wrote the movie, they and are in the movie, they took all of Judd's assistants and the cast, so all the women in the cast, so all the women in it, and rented a party bus, and they took us out, and we went to a bar, we went to the Hollywood Men strip show,
Nice.
the Magic Mike, basically, and then another bar, and we just hung out, and as like a
They
show
had a
of
bachelorette
appreciation.
weekend. Like they did a bachelorette party with you. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
And that was pretty incredible. And everyone was so lovely. It was very surreal. That's something I will never forget. That little piece. And also, he would have meetings all the time where it would be like Daniel Radcliffe would come in and Paul Rubens would come in and like all these people. Also, like working on Funny People, Adam Sandler gave everyone rap gifts, and he was he remembered everyone's name. He was like such a nice
He's a sweetie
person. And I remember like Janusz Kaminski would come up to me and try to like eat my crafty, and so I would like share crafty with Janusz. So that's the things I geeked out about him, and Bob Yeoman, who shot Bridesmaids. So it's like
maybe a little Ethan Hawke, maybe just a little bit. I mean,
yeah. Okay, so yeah. So then in the Blumhouse days, Ethan, I was there for the premiere of Sinister, and he was so nice. Jason's the godfather of his kids, so he's very close with Ethan, and Ethan was very lovely. He's great. I mean, all those folks were great. I mean, Lords of Salem, I'm in. So it was fun to be directed by Rob Zombie.
Yeah, checking that off the bucket list. Nice.
That's freaking cool as all get out.
Yeah. So, and being on set for anything that was shot in LA, I got to go to set for. Pretty much everything was shot in LA. But so all those experiences were very cool. And of course, just like, Lynn Shay, I call Mama Lynn. She's just the best, and same thing, Lee Winnell is great, and James Wan. And but also the first time I got to meet, when I was at the premiere of Insidious, just finally getting to meet James in person, and was pretty cool. And I've since gone in and given notes on cuts of movies and stuff. So, but to have so many great mentors, I'm very thankful for that. And but yeah, that's there were tons during my Blumhouse days too. Like all the premieres were very fun, and I guess they were screenings, they weren't like formal premieres. But
that's okay. That's the insider stuff.
Yeah,
right?
the insider ones where you're like giving notes and hanging out with the cast and the directors, and I mean that's the real stuff.
Yeah. So but getting to like hang out, also Frank Calhoun, because I was a big Maniac remake fan. Amazing. And Frank Oz too. So it's like, anyways, it's like it's pretty wild. But then you get to a point where I transitioned from when you become from fan to peer.
Right.
So it's sort of like so I was like, oh yeah, now these folks are my peers. And it's kind of wild the moment that sort of happens. And also that Blumhouse saw me as something more than an assistant, because a lot of times assistants get stuck and they're the people they work for only see them as assistants.
Right.
I also changed my name to help detach that for anyone I'd encounter too.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's, you know, been that was the sort of tricky thing, is like they saw me as a director, not an assistant anymore, which
Right.
was really nice. And then I got
Oh,
to
that's
make my
nice.
first movie with my like alma mater. It was like pretty cool.
So what's coming up next for you?
So I have a lot of things. So after both movies came out in 2019, Satanic Panic's on Shudder, it's on VHS, it's on Blu-ray.
On VHS.
It is on VHS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a vinyl record too.
We need the
Nice.
vinyl.
Yeah.
We're gonna need that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then All That We Destroy is on Hulu. So both those came out in 2019. So I spent all of 2019 like editing, releasing, because as the director, you're with the movie from conception until it's like on a shelf in a Walmart.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just like, where everyone else goes on to work on other things,
You're
and
still
you're trying to work on
promoting.
the next thing, you're still promoting. And my second movie was a really, really difficult experience. So I had to sort of come out of that. You have to kind of put that behind you to go forward to promote the movie. I'm like incredibly proud of that movie. And I've had a lot of young women come up to me and say they want to be filmmakers after seeing that movie. And I
You're
couldn't
doing the
ask
You did
Lord's
for,
work.
it. That's like,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. Anytime I feel bad about things, I think about that. And I was like, oh yeah, my movie is someone's favorite movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
That's
you
the
can't
great
ask
thing is
for,
we talk and watch so many different kinds of movies, and no matter what movie we watch, like there is somebody out there.
This is
This is
their
their favorite
favorite movie.
Any movie you can think of, and I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And especially when you, as the filmmaker, people tell you that, you're like, oh, I've done, because I think it's hard when especially when you're a director, like you're kind of in the void a bit, because like I'm just doing this technical things and I'm doing editing and how do we get it out, and not really thinking about people are watching this movie, people are enjoying this movie, and it was so much fun. I had
Yeah.
so much fun to watch.
I love that big scary. Can I say dildo on the show? Yeah, we can.
yeah. Kildo.
The killer.
The driller killer. My God, Chelsea, you are a mad woman, and I love it. I love
I mean,
it.
that's all Grady Hendrix. So Grady, it's all out of his fucked up mind. I love Grady so much. I'm so honored that I got to bring his words to life. It has to do with great cast, like
Yeah.
Whitney wearing that is pretty incredible. But yeah. So that experience was really it's hard to make. It was a hard movie to make, and so
What was so challenging about it?
oh, there's so many things. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. That kind of saying is true. But that's a conversation over cocktails.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, all I care about is that the movie turned out great, and the movie is loved and accepted.
Yeah.
And I'm very close with the cast of the movie too, and they love the movie too. And it's just every movie is a miracle.
Yes.
No movie's ever easy. I had stuff. My first movie was tough too, but I'm so thankful I got to make a movie before this one, because it was so challenging. So I shot my first movie in 15 days.
Okay.
I shot Satanic Panic in 18 days.
Oh.
And I only had $250K more than my first movie, and both of these movies are under $1 million. So it's just challenges that are things that are out of your control. So it's
Wow.
like weather, things not working, props not working, this not happening. So it's things that are just like, up to the universe too.
Yeah, it's a gauntlet. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all I care about is like, do we have a movie? Great. Because we had weather problems, we had rain, we had cold, it was just all the things. And so the fact that I'm so proud of that movie, and that movie has made a difference to so many people. And when I was doing, so it played 30 film festivals, and I would go and, women would come up to me and say, I want to make movies after making this. I love your movie. I feel seen after watching your movie. It was wild. It was like really crazy. But women very much connect with that movie, and that makes me very happy. I was like, my job here is done.
Mhm.
So anyways, we're promoting the movie. Finally, everything comes out like around Halloween 2019. meanwhile, I'm getting sent stuff, attaching myself to stuff from my representation. And then we have things lined up, and then 2020 happens.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like this is 2023, and I feel like we're finally kind of sort of coming out of it. I mean, it's still very
Kinda.
present, as y'all know, but
Sorry.
but I feel like things are moving forward more than they were those first 2 years,
Yeah.
even 3 years. So, because last year was sort of focused on me getting married, and
That was the production you put together, and it looked
Yeah.
gorgeous. So
Yes.
congratulations again. Yes.
thank you. So I'm, and last year I was working on a film last year, and of course now we're in at the time this is recording, the writer's strike is happening. There's probably going to be a SAG strike. There may be a DGA strike. It's like a very grim time for just everything's kind of stopping right now.
Yeah.
But it's stopping because of people
We need money.
need livable wage and fair pay, which is just not,
Correct.
come on, people,
Need to eat.
get it the fuck together.
so wild to me. The amount
Yeah.
of people I know who've been writing, or different people I know in writers' rooms who've not gotten paid equitably at all.
Yeah, it's
They're
crazy.
barely making it.
It's insane. So
Mhm.
anyways, all that to say, I have about 6-7 things percolating.
Nice.
Basically right now it's tough because, we're on a strike. So things are kind of in
Yeah.
a holding pattern, but I have a bunch of things that are any of them could happen. So it's just like, you have to put a lot of eggs in a lot of baskets because this industry is so unpredictable
Sure.
that you need to be just ready. But I have everything from a retelling of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None,
Oh.
which is my homage to like Clue and I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend.
Oh, I just got goosebumps for that. Yes.
So I think that might be the one to go first. I
Mhm.
think. I also have another science fiction movie. I have a 1980s movie that, that's the thing. You gotta be, it's like, oh, can't talk about it. So I'm trying to like be, that
Vague,
one,
but a little.
But
yeah, that one
I love that. That's, you
revolves,
don't have to share all
Yeah.
your things from that basket. I love, you already gave me a little morsel.
little
I'm
taste.
excited.
Yeah. So there's,
Ah,
some
mhm.
like period stuff in there. And I just finished writing a sports movie. So a completely different kind of,
You are all
horror.
all
It's
over
a
the
horror
map.
of the
I like
elements,
that.
but that's like the $50 million more studio movie.
Oof.
Um,
Okay. How does that
but
feel to take on? Does that feel
it feels great because I'm the
Yeah.
only person who can direct it. So I'm
Nice.
very excited about it. But again, that's something I can't send out till the strike is done, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So anyways, we'll see what's next. I mean, my partner and I have a TV show we're going to start pitching when the strike is done.
Yes.
And that one I'm very excited about. It's a female serial killer story.
Nice.
But
Like it.
yeah. So anyways, there's a bunch of things percolating. We'll see what comes first. I think something's going to happen this year. I just don't know which one. And I even have Teri Gamble on some casting lists.
Oh. Where's Julia Marchese?
And you too.
I was like, we come together. No, it's great.
Package deal.
Amazing. I'm so
Okay,
ready.
that's good to know.
No, but I mean, this is Hollywood. You know it, right? Like we do this. I'm also an actor, but I'm also a filmmaker.
But
I love a multi-hyphenate. Like
We are
that's
all
what you got to do.
multi. We love multiples in this city. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Chelsea, why are you so cool?
I wish one day.
No, you are the coolest. We have one more question as we're getting here to the end that we have all of our guests. How has George A. Romero made an impact in your life?
Shoot, I should have saved my story. I forgot.
No, that's
No.
okay. This is good. We've talked about Night of the Living Dead. We know a little bit of Martin
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
But now as a filmmaker yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that Night of the Living Dead is the reason I make movies, because that's the movie I saw where how that movie made me feel terrified. I was like, how do I make other people feel this?
Mhm.
And movies, so much about making movies is about emotion. It's about emotional manipulation.
Mhm.
And that's, to me, sort of the thing that when I saw that movie, I was like, this makes me want to make movies. Even as a 10-year-old, like I knew at a very young age, I want to make movies. I want to tell stories. And so, and again, like I talked about, regional filmmaker, I love shooting movies in LA. I've shot one movie here. I'd love to keep shooting here, but they make it very difficult.
Yeah.
I would love to shoot. I'm from Ohio, so I'd love to shoot movies back in Ohio.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like he was shooting in the Pittsburgh area,
Mhm.
sort of putting money back into where you're from. But I think also he had a reputation for being very kind, and he has everyone. You never hear a bad story about George Romero, because he was sort of this larger than life person. I never got to meet him. I wish I would have. Because he's like,
yeah,
because he's like the reason. I just want to be like, you're the reason I'm getting emotional. Reason I make movies. So, and I even though like a lot of people talk about his movies, I still don't think it's like, I still think people need to keep talking about him and his importance. But yeah, he made one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yep.
That even Criterion agrees. So, but that's, yeah, I don't know if I'd be a filmmaker if I hadn't seen that movie.
Yep.
And everyone heard my story about Night of the Living Dead. So
We love that. No, that's beautiful. And that's beautiful just to come back around and just nail that home, because that's what it's about, right? I mean, filmmakers, inspiring filmmakers, and passing that on. And you're already doing that, which I just love. So that's so fantastic. Thank you again so much, Chelsea, for joining us today. We really appreciate you. Can you let people know where they can find you, where they can plug on the internets,
Yeah, I'm very active on Instagram at Chelsea Stardust. That is the only place to find me.
Okay.
And that's where I keep, I tell all the movies I'm watching, music I'm listening to, general activities. I don't do Letterboxd. It's too much. I'll look at my own movies and see the ratings, and I can't do that.
Oh no!
I know my IMDb score for my documentary, and now like every one movie I'm watching, I'm like, oh, is it higher? It's terrible. Don't do that.
Yeah. So so that's where to find me. Find me on Instagram, and that's where I'll also, when from set, where I'll be posting and things like that when I get there. But I'm so happy that I got to do this, because also I love Romero. So
thank you so much.
And I love you too. So it's perfect Saturday morning.
So you can listen to our podcast, Horror Movie Survival Guide, anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, and you can hear Teri and I take a deep dive into a different horror film every week. Decide how you can survive and be the final girl.
Also, check out the George A. Romero Foundation, which is dedicated to restoring Romero's work, including seldom seen pieces from his early career, like one of our favorites, The Amusement Park, and so many other wonderful films, as well as keeping an archive and helping the next generation, hey, that's all of us, of young filmmakers.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Please do feel free to reach out to us, because we love to interact. We'll talk to you about Martin to the end of the time.
Night of the Living Dead all day. And we will see you anything. Yes, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Here's hoping your days and nights are fantastic, horror cool. I am such a nerd. I can't help it. I love sound effects. Like we're in an old-timey radio show.